is so fundamental to the entire human predicament. You and I live in a whole lot of contradictions, conflicts. We have our hope, some hurt, so many emotions rise and fall. A whole lot of things happen in our mind, in our psychology, and if there is a word that represents the common thread in all these, it is thought. Therefore, some dimensions or aspects of thought in this session. One reason I already said it is so vast, and let me tell you another reason too why we cannot see all dimensions of thought, and that is as simple as I myself don't know. There are countless dimensions of what we call thought. So we shall attempt a little bit of opening this mystery of thought. Incidentally, in universities around the world, there is some research going on these days with regard to what is consciousness. Consciousness studies, they call it. And they labor on such issues like, is there consciousness other than matter? Is there something that constitutes life other than all the physical and chemical and add electrical stuff that we know of in science? And the opinion is divided in that matter too. There are some who believe that there is something called consciousness independent of matter, or for that matter, independent of energy and matter. As you know, energy and matter are a pair between which even conversion has been found to be possible. So, other than energy and matter, there is something, some entity called consciousness, some people believe, and perhaps a larger number of scientists do not believe so. They look at consciousness as an epiphenomenon of matter only. All right, just like consciousness is a very daunting topic, a big challenge to human intellect, this topic of ours this evening, thought, is extremely challenging. What actually is thought? Perhaps in days to come, there will be departments in the universities called thought studies to understand the nature of thought. Now, before I get going, I should make a clarification. In literature of many mystics, many seers, many philosophers, many thinkers, and so on, the word thought has been used with some little differences too. That applies not only to thought, but even to words like consciousness and many other words. Therefore, in these topics, let us be very clear about it. There is always sometimes a little bit issue of terminology. In this session, my attempt will be to avoid terminologies of couple of other schools that I know, and I will attempt adhering to the terminology that we generally have in the teachings of Shri J. Krishnamurti. Thought is, broadly speaking, of two kinds. When I see a table, I recognize here is a table. Or when I uh, figure out that I have to catch a flight, it's at 9 a.m. and it's already 7 a.m. I must leave home. I must leave home so that I reach the airport well in time. Now there is a thought about so much time is left. These are functional thoughts. There are thousands of functional thoughts that rise and fall in us. Even to make a cup of tea, I go to the kitchen and look at, oh, where is tea powder? Where is sugar? Okay, oh, here it is. So I am thinking, but these are functional thoughts. Now, I will no more make any reference to functional thoughts, for our discussion is not about functional thoughts. We will use the word thought specifically for what is otherwise called psychological thought. We will not add the adjective psychological, rather, let us have an understanding when we use the word thought in the following 30 minutes or so, what it means is psychological thought. But it is necessary for us to define and make it clear what this psychological thought is after all. Psychological thought is nebulous. Psychological thought is not so sharply discernible. Psychological thought is a result of certain judgment which is questionable, which varies from person to person. If there is a chair in front of five of us, all five of us look at it and say, this is a chair. But you and I, suppose, get an award, or our picture comes in the newspaper in some favorable light, or we are talked about in some get together. And sometimes we hear that somebody gossiped very negatively about us. Five people hear that kind of news. The thoughts that arise in them vary. It's not like knowing a table to be just a table. Here, somebody may get angry, somebody may resist, somebody may react in some other way, somebody may have a tendency to just laugh at it, somebody may just ignore what is said about oneself. And to add to the complexity of this nebulous, or rather undefinable, unpredictable movement of this psychological thought, there is also tremendous interference of memory in the shaping of psychological thought. No wonder Krishnaji, one of his most well-known statements goes, defined thought as a response of memory. Moment we see a person, moment we see a place, or for that matter, the moment we see ourselves in the mirror, if certain memories arise, which generally do, we get a certain opinion about things and about ourselves too. We see a house, to see a house is one step, and next moment, when some memories are stirred up in us, we may have a sad thought. At one time, I had such a beautiful house like this one. Today, circumstances have forced me to move into a rented apartment. How unlucky I am, and so on. So the house is perceived, and then immediately memories make me comment on the house, its value, its price, and its status, and then within a jiffy, in a jiffy, it comes to self evaluation. I am unfortunate, or of course, in some other instance, the self evaluation could be what we call favorable. How fortunate I am. I am one of the very few who have received such an award or who have been talked of so well by people, etc. Therefore, certain judgment, certain evaluation leading to a higher self worth or a lower self worth, etc., are characteristic of thought. Therefore, invariably, thought is something that accompanies our conditionings. Thought, conditionings, and numerous images stored in our brain all go hand in hand. Thus, this function of thought is something that most people cannot lay a hand on. And no wonder human life proceeds in tremendous amount of complexity. Somebody is envied by another person, but that some so-called somebody himself may pity himself. So what is enviable in one's eyes could be pitiable in another's eyes. In the teachings that you and I have been applying our mind to, there are wonderful insights and beautiful revelations made about thought. One of the astounding remarks that Krishnaji has made at many places is how thought, time, and the self are one. Thought, time, and the self are one. I would call it a very incisive, profound, and astounding remark. Where there is the operation of thought, right away there is the operation of the self with its insecurity or occasionally with its great self gratification, glee, happiness, pleasure, and whatnot. Thought and the self are seen to be operating together. And along with them, again, with no delay, with no gap, there is the operation of time. There is the sense of, I am left with very little time, or sometimes a sense of, there is a lot of time, and so on. On one hand, the dilation and the contraction of time in our mind, irrespective of the clock time, is an interesting phenomenon. Two girls are writing an examination, and both of them at the same chronological time instant may look up at the clock on the wall. The examination, let us say, is for 3 hours, 9 a.m. to 12 noon. And when both these girls writing the examination look at the wall and the clock on the wall, they realize there are 10 minutes left. But as you can imagine, the first girl might be very happy. I have finished well in time. I have answered all the questions. Now, in the 10 minutes, I'll just take a quick look at whether I have done properly. She is happy. The second girl looks at the same 10 minutes to 12 and feels as though the sky falls upon her, the roof comes down. hurtling, or she is in panic. My God, I haven't done enough at all. How can I now complete? So, while the chronological time shows only 10 minutes left, the two students experience less time or adequate time, etc. Another dimension of time is the phenomenon of desire, of wanting to become. When you and I pick up a book, and let's say it's a very famous book, a present bestseller, and we say, oh, really? Who has written this? It says 3 million copies sold. Interesting. And then we look at the back cover, and there is the mention with a little picture of the author. And we find that that author is only 42-year-old. At the age 42, he has done all this, and his books have sold in many, many millions. I am already 53. I'm not talking my age, but somebody among us. And I haven't achieved this much at all. So you see, there is a sense of he is 42, I am 53, he seems to have achieved more. I am yet to arrive over there. I am yet to become somebody in this competitive world. All kinds of conclusions this mind begins to draw. Now, that is psychology. The book doesn't say to us, look, you are 11 years older than this author. Nobody is talking to us. But our wanting to become somebody, maybe a desire to become a popular, well known author or speaker or scientist or attorney or businessman or whatever people want to become. And in the backdrop of wanting to become, the psychological time raises its ugly head. You and I feel sometimes panicky. I think I have lost the race. First of all, who announced the race? But we imagine a race, and we imagine ourselves running at high speed, and we perceive ourselves as getting tired. And then one day we say, "Ha, I have lost the race." Everything is the circus, is the mischief of thought. Thus, thought, time, self, becoming, desire, hoping, getting panicky, all these are one gamut. They are all interconnected. It's interesting that mystics of a certain um, high level, lofty mystics, call them lofty or call them very profound, very penetrating. Mystics have tried to tackle this issue of thought. In fact, during Krishnaji's time, there was a man, very interesting man, I believe. He was a bit funny also, they say. And I'm talking about nobody else than Maurice Friedman. Friedman or Friedman, whatever. This engineer from Poland had come to India and then settled in India more than for engineering, which initially brought him to India. He actually fell in love with the mystics of this country. And we hear about him. He would go to Tiruvannamalai, where Sri Ramana Maharshi had lived, and probably Maharshi had dropped his body already. And he would go to Mumbai and spend days in the company of Nisargadatta, and he was, of course, very much in touch with Jiddu Krishnamurti. And Krishnaji was fond of him. Krishnaji, in fact, at one time sent Maurice Friedman to Rajghat Besant School. in some capacity, as principal or maybe as some administrator. And apparently that did not go so well for Maurice Friedman, with a tremendous passion and deep interest in the teachings of Krishnaji, Nisargadatta, and Ramana, all the same, was otherwise very disorganized, and apparently he was not so good in administration, handling matters of the world. That doesn't matter. But I raise his name for a particular reason. Maurice Friedman was drawn to these three mystics of his time, though Maharshi must have passed on a little before, but approximately contemporaries they were. And all these three had something to say, very important, something very significant about the way thought operates. Here is thought, and Maharshi Ramana talked of all thoughts rising from certain I thought, I hyphen thought, which is as simple as that, as simple as this. I thought meaning uh, you and I carry thoughts which actually build a certain self image. I may be a very rich man, and yet I may have a image of myself as a terrible failure. I may be head of department of some subject in an esteemed university, but I may suffer from some inferiority complex. So, without giving too many gross examples, which is not warranted, a sense of who I am is nothing but thought. And Maharshi Ramana, with whom many of you I'm sure are a bit familiar, incessantly asked people who had some exchanges with him to inquire whether this sense of who one is true. The famous Who Am I inquiry, called self inquiry, marks that's the highlight of Maharshi Ramana's teachings. I'll come to Krishnaji as the third number. Here comes Nisargadatta, who also extensively talks about the movement of thought. I believe his dialogues were translated from Marathi to English by Maurice Friedman, that is well known. But Maurice Friedman took help of some lady who actually was a dedicated student of Krishnaji. Therefore, if you read I Am That, the book of Nisargadatta Maharaj, you will feel very much at home if already you are familiar with Krishnaji's teachings. Because the lady who helped Maurice Friedman translate from Marathi, Friedman himself did not know Marathi. That lady was familiar with the teachings of Krishnaji. Now, in the context of thought, Nisargadatta would say, can you look at thought and, as an example, look at a self description. I am a winner, right? Or some other place, I am a loser. And a third place, I am old. And a fourth place, I am helpless. He would say, in all these sentences, there is first I am. And he said, can you stay with I am and downplay what follows I am? That was his way of throwing some light on the movement of thought and what we can do with it. And therefore, without going long on Nisargadatta, I would say the mystic called Nisargadatta, who lived in a simple way in Mumbai, actually drew the attention of friends and others who came to him to imagine. a network of thought, but all of them at the center of them all having a certain basic sense of I am. Stay with I am, and apparently what he meant was the various ramifications of thought when we do not actually uh, give more energy to them, we do not support them, those ramifications subside on their own, and then something happens. Now, coming to Krishnaji was never tired of asking us on a very general footing to examine our own life, and a little more specifically, did he not say, observe the movement of the self? Sometimes he would say, observe the movement of the self. Some other times, observe the movement of thought. So, observation or inquiry or staying with the simple I am and not to give much reality to what follows I am. I am a loser. I am a weakling. I am a wretched person, etc. The mind may say anything, but not to give importance to that description was Nisargadatta's advice. Krishnaji would not give that kind of advice. In fact, in a technical sense, I always have looked at Krishnaji's teaching as very, very precise. Because the moment you create a model, moment you make it a bit figurative, the moment you make it a part of some graphic scenario, though it becomes more palatable to a lot of people, though a lot of people, enjoy that kind of imagery, technically and scientifically, all models do injustice to the truth. Therefore, to do better justice to truth, we need to put aside all these hasty models. Most of you would know or may know that the models of an atom with a nucleus having protons and neutrons, and with a number of electrons rotating in various orbits, has been known now to be not at all precise. It is it's a model that works well for certain purposes. For a number of purposes, number of applications, you may use that model. But as physicists have gone deeper and deeper and understood the structure of an atom, they have actually laughed at the so-called Bohr's model or Rutherford's model. There used to be those really, some graphic model of an atom. That is an analogy I would draw here too. For the moment you talk about primary thought, secondary thought, and questioning, inquiring, etc., to a large number of people it looks attractive, but nothing like seeing, gentle seeing, seeing, and then rest of it is more negational language. Seeing without bias, seeing without prejudice, seeing without resistance, all without, please see. And there is no modeling, in fact, unmodeling. You know, if you say, look at thought with affection, with love, cling to it, that would be a positive language, but that would do great injustice. No involvement or no clinging, or what is that other word? With no effort, with no judgment, and with no choice, right? Everything is choiceless. So In technical terms, in more scientific language, when we put aside those descriptions which actually limit the truth, descriptions actually do certain injustice to the truth, so much the better. So here is thought, a great mystery. Actually, we may call it the fundamental mystery of human life. And this observing, which also is not to be made into a method or a technique or, you know, which is not to be made something that happens on the axis of time. If you are doing something else, you are uh, on a treadmill and you increase the speed of the belt, then you say, okay, so many steps per minute now, and so many, I increase the steps or whatever way, so many miles per hour, etc. There is a indicator over there. Then you are doing that, running on the treadmill with a certain sense of time. In so much time now, I want to finish such distance, and today's workout is over. That kind of thinking we do, which is fine in the functional field. All these have their own place. But is observation of thought, is observation of anger, is observation of hurt something that is to be measured like that on the axis of time? The moment you allow time to enter the scenario, there is no observation at all. In this way, thought is a certain, I would take the liberty of calling it a mysterious phenomenon where human existence appears so conditioned, so affected. Human existence becomes such a puzzle. You and I are at our wits' end to understand who we are, what is happening in our life, where we are heading out, and so on. Out in the world, there are all kinds of popular expressions. They would say, oh, you are a victim of thoughts. Thoughts are ruling you. You must become the master of thought. All this blah blah is said because those figurative expressions, to be a master of thought and not to be a slave to thought, etc., makes an attractive proposal. Everybody wants to be a master. In fact, another very popular expression you come across, if you go to any large bookshop with self-help category, there are books which talk about living in the present, the power of now. Uh, then the books sell better. You use the word power, power of now, the magic of living in the present, and so on. Actually, all of that has certain amount of injustice done to the theme proper. Actually, even if you take this idea of living in the present, superficially it is true that we get swept away by certain anxieties of future, and we sink in despair because of memories of the past, and therefore it on the surface it makes sense if we could be in the present. But actually, the matter is not as simple as it appears. There is, rather than willing to be in the present, using willpower to say, I am going to be in the present. Today, I am not going to think of the past, etc. That is use of willpower, right? That is such a ridiculous affair. Nothing like neither willing to control thought, suppress thought, control thought, uh, nor just indulge in it. Just allow thought to hijack us. There is a totally different approach possible. And that seems to be the most mature approach, if at all we may call it so. Even to call it an approach, even to call it a way, would be a little injustice to it. Many years ago, in a very interesting dialogue in Rajghat, Rajesh Dalal, in fact, beautifully brought out his understanding. He said, people say Krishnamurti's approach. That's a wrong expression, he said. And I truly enjoyed a whole lot of insights that Rajesh ji had to share with us. He objected that evening vehemently to calling Krishnamurti's teachings as an approach to. The moment you say it is an approach, uh, you have maybe in a more respectable language made it a method. Being aware, seeing thought, seeing what is, that is even a better expression. Seeing what is not one of the several options. An approach is one of the many options. But seeing what is letting go of all approaches, letting go of all methods, and be aware. And be aware also is not a choice, it's not something willed. Just as, let me say this and bring a pause to my words, a man cannot, uh, you know, let's say a man is walking, suddenly he stops and say, okay, let me remind myself I am a man, and then puts another 10 steps. Again says, I am a man, okay, another 10 steps. How ridiculous! Why should he say I am a man to himself? He is a man, that is the truth of it. In like manner, to be aware, to see thoughts is in fact not embracing a method or an approach. Rather, it is letting go of some approaches or methods or techniques or ways, etc., which our mind is fond of conceiving, buying into, subscribing to, etc. Thus, I have shared some thoughts on the nature of thought. Let me pause here and uh, let me say the floor is open for a discussion. Uh, Sushil Jain said, I will answer. I don't want to be the person to answer. Some I will answer and some others can answer. Let it be a discussion. That is the true meaning of dialogue rather than one person answering. Thank you.
May I request Parit to say something?
Yeah, okay.
Right, that would be nice. If
Are you
Harshaji
able?
can make a few comments.
Yeah, right. Okay. Are you able to hear my voice?
Very well.
Yeah, very clearly.
Okay. Okay. The first time I came across a book of Krishnamurti, it was The Flight of the Eagle. And in that book, Krishnamurti was saying many things. And he said that all our problems which we feel in our daily life, like fear, anger, jealousy, loneliness, boredom, all that is coming from thinking, the source. And he said, from thinking arises the sense of thinker or I am. And once this I am, that thinker comes, then it tries to change thought that I like it or I don't like it. So in Krishnamurti's word, thought creates the thinker, and then the thinker tries to change thought. And so there is this duality between thinker and thought that is the source of all our psychological problems. So when I read that, It was the first time I read such a thing, and I asked, is it really so that all this thinker I, it comes from thought? Uh, whether it is possible to verify it, to see it actually. So at that time, I was doing my PhD in America, and I had an office, and I really wanted to look at the truth of what Krishnaji was saying. And if you want to see the truth of that, one has to go to the source of thinking itself. And that means one must have a lot of curiosity, intensity, honesty to look at the beginning of a thought. And when a person is really curious, and when I was, and I tried to look at the beginning of a thought, my mind stopped really. And it was something very beautiful thing. I felt a kind of silence, no thought was coming, and yet the senses were alive. And in that state where the thinking has stopped, there are no problems. There is no thinker, no I. And that sense of looking or seeing or observation is what Krishnaji calls awareness. And so, what we call mind, human mind, is made up of two things. One is these thoughts, and there is something different than thought. It's called awareness. And the awareness can see thoughts very, very clearly. It can see how it creates problems. And our problem of human beings is that this awareness is not awakened in most human beings, though they may use the word awareness. It is mostly a thinking, and that awareness, when it really comes into it happens really in one's life. One sees the beauty of it, and newness comes, and it's kind of a very strange. And the first time it happened, I felt, I asked many people, look at me. I told my friends, do you see something when I am looking at a tree and my mind is completely silent? And they said, no, they can't see anything different about it. But I felt that yes, I could look at the trees and everything without thinking. And that was a wonderful thing I experienced. And so from then onwards, this became the most important thing, just to look, not to ask. I did not ask many questions like Krishnaji is asking, and many people who are interested in Krishnamurti, they are asking many questions, but I did not ask any questions. I'm interested in just looking. And in that looking, whatever is coming, it can be seen as it is. And that even if a anger is coming, that anger can be seen and it dissolves. So Krishnaji says that in the light of awareness, all our problems created by thinking, it dissolves. So this is the real teachings of Krishnamurti, is to come to a state where we can look at clearly whether it is a tree or a human being or your friend, and looking without thinking. And that is the real beauty. And maybe Raman Maharshi may call it true self. Krishnamurti can say choiceless awareness, or some other teachers can say it's a witness, just looking, not doing anything about it. So I find that the whole thing is very simple, but when we don't do it and think so much, ask too much, discuss too much, maybe we make things more complicated because the real thing is non-verbal. And to really have that experience, not experience, but just seeing things without looking, without thinking, that awareness is hidden. It is there in human beings, but there are a very dense clouds of thinking, and we are going round and round in thinking. It's like a rat trying to catch its own tail. It's not able to catch it. It goes round and round, and the rat doesn't know that it is going round and round. And even many intellectuals are also going in round and round in thinking, though they may discover something great invention in science, they can do it. But this awareness is something, is completely different. It is in a different plane than thinking. So if we say thinking is like a two-dimensional flat surface, awareness is coming out from that flat surface in the third dimension and looking at the whole surface of thinking. And so this is the real beauty in human existence. If a person can really come out from the two-dimensional plane of thinking and come in the third dimension, then everything looks so beautiful. Even if you look at the sky and the clouds and the birds and the colors and the shapes, everything looks very beautiful in this awareness. So people in whom such a thing has happened, they feel it. It's not something related to thinking. But this is the real challenge of it is like if I give an analogy, a picture, it's like a cat and a rat. A cat looks at the rat and the rat runs for its life, finds a hole in the wall, and the rat has gone inside and the cat is looking outside and extremely alert. And the moment the rat comes, the cat jumps on it. So this cat is like an awareness, and that rat is like a thought which has. So this is just an analogy. It is not, but this awareness, it requires a tremendous energy. It's like a freedom at the beginning to really look, to be intensely looking without any motivation like that. So, okay, I have said something.
Thank you very much, Harshad Parekh sir. May I request Sanjeev Sharma sir to comment? Sanjeev Sharma sir, please, please make him co-host. Modak sir, please make him co-host or open. Sanjeev Sharma, are you listening me? संजीव शर्मा
वो होस्ट है, वो स्वयं को अनम्यूट कर सकते हैं वो.
अच्छा तो आज के लिए अनम्यूट.
Yeah. Now I can. Yeah, actually wonderful conversation, wonderful discussion. I don't want to comment anything. I just want to be in that mood. I think if any questions are arising, they can ask. And I have a very beautiful video of 15-20 minutes of Krishnamurti. We will see that video.
after
After the question.
7:30.
Yes. Yeah.
After Dinesh Wagmare, you can go on. Dinesh Wagmare, you can go on. Dinesh Wagmare.
Can you listen to me?
Wagmare को open करो.
Am I audible? I want to ask. Can you listen to me?
Yeah, we are
Hello?
able to listen to you. You please go ahead.
Sir, my two questions. I am having two questions. One to Mr. Chidanandji, who said that simple pure seeing without any thought. What I want to explore is, once you see anything, immediately the image is formed. So image making is not avoided by just seeing. Say for example, I see the tree, immediately the image of the tree is okay, I'm not making I'm not going to immediately as soon as I see a tree, the image is formed. Another
You're
point Mr. Arshad Panik, that he said that awareness is okay. He talked about awareness, but in the sleep awareness goes on. So, so the thing which is not important. How he said awareness is the only thing which is
सर
for
सर
everything
आपका
and it is
मोडक आवाज आ रही है कहीं से बहुत ज्यादा।
I think
मोडक
something is missing.
आवाज
Could
आ
you
रही है
comment
कहीं से ज्यादा
Mr.
और
Chidanand
दिल
and
की
Mr.
आवाज
Arshad
क्लियर नहीं
Parik?
आ रही है। व्हाट इज रॉन्ग? ये आवाज कहाँ से आ रही है?
अभी तो कहीं से भी नहीं आ रही।
वाघमारे सर की आवाज क्लियर नहीं थी। फिर से पूछो
अब
वाघमारे।
हाँ उनको पूछते हैं वापस।
वाघमारे प्लीज स्टार्ट अगेन।
Audible.
हाँ
Could you
ऑडियबल।
listen to me?
हाँ प्लीज स्पीक स्लोली
Could you listen my
so
voice?
that everybody can understand.
आप
I am having two questions. One is to Mr. Chidanandji. He said that pure seeing without thought is okay. But as soon as I see a tree, the image is formed. So, what he has to say about it? My second question is to Mr. Harshad Parik, who said that awareness is at the base of something and you feel very good when you see the only with the awareness. You remain with the awareness. But awareness also goes off in sleep. So, is something missing? That's what my question is. It is not, it is transient. Awareness is also transient.
Yeah, so may I try to answer the first question of yours?
Welcome.
Huh?
Welcome. You are welcome.
Oh, yeah. It's true that our experience has been that whenever we see anything, images rise, and we, in fact, develop some likes or dislikes, etc. However, uh, the teachings require us to be aware of that also. Whatever reactions are rising, whatever images are rising, but generally what we do is when certain likes and dislikes arise or some images arise, we begin to choose. Something looks interesting to us, something is enjoyable, so we embrace some and resist some other, and so on. So the teachings require us to be aware of that responses we are coming out with, and in that awareness itself, everything will undergo the necessary change. Nothing to be done, but seeing itself is all the way the remedy, so to say. I think more or less same question was asked to Harshad ji too. So maybe Harshad ji can continue on this.
Yes. Yes, it is true that initially, when we have this sense of awareness, it doesn't stay long. But once it is, you have tasted it, and then whenever the awareness goes, and you get caught like going round and round in thinking, then again you begin to look, and then that going round and round goes away, and one has to give a lot of attention to what is happening, not in order to become somebody, but really out of curiosity. And if this becomes the most important thing or most enjoyable thing, then it may become one's nature that one doesn't need to make an effort to just look at whatever is going on. So it is just like when we learn a language or music, initially a lot of effort is required. But once you become very good, then you don't like, I'm not making an effort to speak here. It is just the words are coming. Similarly, musicians, they can produce beautiful music without effort when their whole being in that music. So uh, finally, it means how much really we are interested in looking at what is, whatever is happening, whether it's good or bad, and not only begin to think only when the problem arises. Then there is, uh, then it is a partial. Only we are then looking only to solve the problem. But this looking, it's not for solving problem. It is just looking, and that makes you feel happy to just look, in which maybe again we can't make a choice in this thing because a choiceless awareness there. So as long as this me, the sense of I exists, then awareness doesn't exist.
But awareness also goes off in the sleep, no?
Yeah, yeah, it may go on and then something may uh, goes on, but again it will come back by itself.
Is
But
something
you don't
is
make an
some
effort to, yeah, don't make an effort to.
is something missing, sir? In this is awareness basic thing?
In Can you say again?
Is awareness basic thing? Basic is the base because
Yes,
it
it
goes
is
off
like
in.
a, it is there, it is there, it is like a space, and the matter exists in the background of space, and thought exists in the background of awareness. Awareness is there, but when the thought is going round and round, that awareness is not available, but it is there all the time. You know,
Okay, thank you.
it is there, but is we get caught into. It's like our mind is like a spider. The spider makes many webs, but the spider doesn't get caught into its own web. But mind creates web of thoughts, but it gets caught into, and then it goes round and round. You know, thinking. So um, finally, it depends on how much we are passionate, curious to look whatever is happening. You know, that is all we can do. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Not to
Thank
worry
you, sir.
about if the awareness goes. Yeah, correct.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Anand, you can ask your question?
Yes, sir. Sir, I wanted to ask, why is that we keep condemning thought? I mean, thought, I mean, it rightly makes certain images because it has to survive. I mean, it has to know whether it is dangerous or not. Therefore, it does make images in the functional world. Also, psychologically, when I say my son, it gives me some amount of happiness. When I say my father, it gives me some amount of happiness in that or gratification, or whatever you may call that. What is wrong in that is my question, sir. We seem to be very easily trying to condemn it. I don't understand why. Okay, that's my question, sir.
If I may share 2 cents from my side, uh, to have certain affection for my son, to have certain happy feeling about my village, etc., um, are not at all a problem. So by context, by force of context, we are, if at all we are condemning, I do not deny, if we are condemning, we condemn only certain overtures, certain undue amount of importance we give, whereby there is injustice, there is violation of universal values, and so on. If I have affection for my village, there is no violation of a universal value. But if my affection and a little happy feeling about my village leads to making some very sweeping statements, all other villages are no good or some such thing. And in human relationships, very often we find that our attachment crosses boundaries, and we actually turn somewhat inimical to so called others. So, by force of contact, it is only to clear that kind of. Otherwise, you find even people like Krishnaji had a fondness for maybe some kind of food, maybe for, he was fond of some Sanskrit chants also. I have heard that he used to recite Dakshinamurti Stotra or Purusha Suktam with great happiness. So, by force of context, it is only the additional dimensions which are which somehow create a division between man and man. If somebody loves India, there's nothing wrong. But if it has the smell of hating Pakistanis or Bangladeshis, then that would be very questionable, right? So I
The
think
question
there
is,
is a context has to be taken in.
so the
Over to
May I
question is
say?
Harshadji,
when I,
maybe you have something to say.
I want to say that thinking is not a problem. Problem is the lack of awareness. Because when awareness is there, thinking doesn't create problem. It moves in a straight line, in a proper orderly way. If I give some just a image, it's like in a dark room. If there are many people and they are walking, they will collide with each other because there is a darkness. But if the light is turned on, then all these people can walk in such a way that they don't collide with each other. So our problem is not thinking, the problem is the lack of awareness.
yes, sir, but then the question is, when I condemn something, is there an understanding of it? Is the question, sir. When I say I
No,
don't want it, I want something else. Can I
yeah,
see that wanting something else? I don't have the understanding of this.
yeah. So because it is condemning is happening because there is thinking but no awareness.
So if there's an understanding of what thought is, I mean, isn't that awareness? I'm putting within quotes.
Hmm. No,
The
there is the
understanding of
intellectual.
thought, how it operates. I mean, what is why it is operating such a way. Understanding
Hmm.
of that, isn't that
Yeah.
awareness? I'm putting within quotes.
No, understanding is intellectual, seeing is non-verbal, which is awareness.
I mean understanding, seeing, perception. I would
Hmm.
say. I mean that, sir. Understanding, not intellectually, understanding per se.
If it is understanding, then it doesn't create problem.
But why do I keep condemning thought? Is my question.
Why do you? Yes,
Why do I keep saying it should dissolve? It should not be there. Is my
yeah, right.
question, sir.
Yeah. Why do you do that?
I would
Because you
once
want
more
to.
say by context and by definition, whatever thought we are condemning is unhealthy, and it is what Harshadji called arising in darkness. So we have to see the very definition of it. By definition, there are unhealthy thoughts. Would you agree that among 100 thoughts that we get, there are maybe whatever number, 50 or 60 unhealthy thoughts. So we are talking only of dissolving unhealthy thoughts. Then that happens in
So
awareness.
again, when I call them unhealthy, sir, I mean, again, that again, I'm back to my conditioning. What is healthy? What is unhealthy?
Not no.
The question is,
Uh,
can I observe it without sitting in judgment of it or coming to conclusions?
yeah, interestingly, it is only through non-judgmental observation that the unhealthiness of those unhealthy thoughts gets exposed. Yeah, observation has to be non-judgmental. Then what was earlier not noticed to be divisive gets exposed as divisive.
But would I
Like,
call that good or bad, sir?
when one has proper awareness, one discovers. Let's see, language has its own limitations. Whether you call it bad or you do not call it bad, there are certainly certain thoughts which were causing um, division, which were causing disharmony, which were robbing the peace inside you. So there are certainly there. For example, somebody in the name of patriotism hates anybody from another country, let us say. In enhanced awareness, he finds that is such a gross mistake to make sweeping generalization. So he realizes, and then he quietly, without noise, that kind of uh, judgment disappears.
Patriotism and nationalism, they are divisive forces, aren't they, sir? Can I say being patriotic something great? It divides people. Having boundaries is
This,
it's dividing people once again. So I
but
love
there
my
is
country. It's
sometimes,
again, can I? Yeah,
yeah, there is some language problem here. When you say love, what is meant by love?
absolutely. Yeah.
When you say affection, what is meant by affection? Somebody says, some particular food is agreeable to me. So is that objectionable or is it okay?
So
Obviously,
that
you can't expect somebody to like all kinds of food.
true.
So there is some another word,
Those are personal
agreeability.
choices. Yeah. Those are personal choices which does not I mean, doesn't bring about fragmentation, which is the cause. I mean, which is happening right now in the entire on this planet. The so-called
Hmm.
nationalism, the so-called patriotism, the kind of violence which is taking place. And and when you mention food, sir, I would like to again remind once again, even that is a major problem, sir. When I like certain foods, it's also one of the major factors which is having creating the a problem with the environment. I like
Hmm.
certain foods. Definitely, I mean, you mentioned that, so I'm bringing up. The food also is a major cause for the problems which the planet is facing.
Hmm. Hmm. Sure.
Can I observe that is a question, sir?
Definitely. Even in the
Yes.
context of food, there are kinds of food which create a problem for nature, environment, economy, everything. Then maybe there are certain kinds of food which are, well aligned with what they call a natural balance between all the species. They often talk about natural and man-made issues. So understanding the ways of nature itself is a challenge, I guess, to the human intellect. Man tries to conquer nature, then says, "Oh, I have violated nature," then wants to step back. By then, things have already gone out of hand. Industry and other vested interests would have hijacked what man had discovered. Like scientists discovered nuclear energy, politicians in no time hijacked it for various purposes. And some scientists joined the politicians gladly also, I must add.
May I say something?
You are welcome, sir.
Okay.
Welcome.
Yeah, okay. It seems to me that, at least this is my view, that we ask too many questions. Even the question like, can I observe? No, you just observe. You don't need to ask such a question. So that is when we ask question when we are really not observing. So we had a dialogue with Populji in Rishi Valley, and Populji asked me, "Can you be silent?" No, yeah, she was talking about inquiry, and I said, "Why inquiry? Asking questions is like dropping a stone in the quiet water, and then all the ripples which start observing. That is inquiry." So she asked me, "Are the waters always quiet?" I said, "No, question arises because the waters are not quiet." So that is our problem, that we become very intellectual after reading Krishnamurti, and then we begin to ask so many questions, but we don't really observe. Even we ask question, can I observe? No, don't need to ask question. Just observe, be silent, look whatever is coming in your mind. So we don't do it. That is the problem.
So, but this
May I request
question,
Raj
I
Tilak
mean,
to
not.
go ahead? Raj Tilak, sir, wait a minute, sir. Raj Tilak
Yes,
wanted
sir.
to comment something.
Sure.
Yes, Raj
Um,
Tilak, please.
yeah, thank you. Are you guys able to hear me?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, we are able to hear you.
Yeah. This distinction between awareness and thought, um, it seems to me that rises from thought not understanding itself. Like as Parikji said, I, the thinker, it is thought. Thought doesn't know it is thought. Do we really feel I am thought, or do we feel ourselves as something apart from thought? The illusion is me feeling as though I am something apart from thought. So I call myself awareness, which is just looking, purely seeing, watching thought. When one really sees what is thought, or thought itself sees what it is, not as to something separate from it, actually, awareness and thought are not two different things at all. We think thought is some sentence running in our head.
Yeah.
But no, you want to say something?
Yes. It's just again give a image. If the room is very empty and you are sitting in that room and your eyes is open and the door is open and somebody enters through the door and you see that somebody has entered. Like similarly, this awareness is a state of being empty. And in that, whatever is thoughts are coming are seen. It's like that. So it is entirely different than thinking. This awareness, as long as a person has not felt this awareness, will doubt its existence. Like when Krishnaji was talking with students, and Krishnaji said, "Look at that tree. Can you look at it without any thinking?" And one boy, 8th standard boy, he was very intelligent boy, and he asked Krishnaji, "Can you do it?" And Krishnaji said, of course, otherwise I will not ask such a question. So there is a state of awareness, but as long as it is not awakened, thinking will create many, many doubts, many, many problems. And it will, even this thinking will say that awareness is the product of thinking only. So this is our problem.
Um, uh, I
So
completely disagree.
how do I
Yeah.
differentiate between perception and awareness, sir? Awareness is of time. Perception is not of time.
No, they are both same thing. Perception, seeing, awareness. It's not different. Is we make it all very analyze it, different words.
So in conversation with David Baum, Krishnamurti and David Baum discussed this, sir. I mean, this is where it's been mentioned that awareness is of time and not perception.
I will not I don't give so much importance to these words. I'm interested in just looking and even forget what Krishnaji had said and David Bohm has said. And just look, what be silent and look. That's all.
Hmm. I think Sudeshna had raised the hand. Does she have a question? Maybe she has left. No.
Raj Tilak.
Yeah,
Raj
yeah, I
Tilak.
was saying
Yes.
certain things.
Yes.
Yeah, please speak.
No, I don't have a question, but I get stuck. That is, as Harshadji says, that when you go to the beginning of thought, there is some silence. So I've been trying this, that getting to the beginning, if suppose I'm feeling angry, getting to the beginning. But
Hmm.
oftentimes I felt it's coming from somewhere. I'm not getting into the root. And I have read, I don't know, that there is an unconscious mind from where it comes. So often we have, so I face this problem. I cannot get into the root, and therefore I know the reason. Again, it comes back, like hunger comes back. And so that is in our unconscious mind. So we human beings, but again, of course, Harshadji said that there, if we have awareness, we can get into the root. But the
Yeah.
problem I face is mostly it's not in my hands. Oftentimes I have felt, I don't know from where suddenly it comes back. So I get stuck there. I mean, I know that we have to get into the root, but the root is somewhere which I often miss. Maybe because it is in the unconscious mind, or what? Unconscious mind, I have read about it. I am not aware of it. So there I get stuck. Otherwise, we know that we have to step out of thought. I'm not segregating negative or positive thoughts, but the where I get stuck over the years is this, that I cannot get into the root. However much, of course, 24 hours we can't have awareness because we have work, sleep, of course, I'm omitting that. But getting to the root of it, as Harshadji said, he has tried and he got to the beginning, but somehow I'm missing it, I think. That's why it's coming back. Why it's coming back, I'm understanding, but getting to the root is, I'm missing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it
In
requires
my
a physical.
understanding, if I may, okay, yeah,
No,
Harshadji,
you
go
can.
on.
No, you
I
can.
will say this and I have to leave. In my understanding, the conscious mind is the only thing that we can be aware of. Unconscious, by definition, is something that we cannot lay our hands on. But the good news seems to be if we are more patient with this conscious mind, this inability today of getting to the roots will go. If you stay patient in the conscious domain itself, you will find very valuable clues, very valuable hints to the rise of anger or whatever it is. So that seems to be the good news. Conscious mind itself is capable of revealing all your secrets. Just like somewhere it was said There is no need to go to the past to understand why we are behaving in a certain way today. In our psychology today itself, the causes can be understood. If we carefully notice the way our thought operates today, then in that operation, there are causes for our behavior. We don't have to go to some high school incident or college incident and so on. So it's a parallel. Here too, conscious mind itself can open the secrets, it seems to be. Yes, Harshadji, you may continue. I
Yeah,
Thank you
excuse
very much,
myself.
Chidanandji.
Namaste, everybody.
Thank you. So next Thursday you have to come. Lecture will be of Sir Harshad Parikh sir, but we will require you. Your comments and your presence will grace the function.
I will.
Would you
I
please
will
be
try to
kind?
join. Thank you.
Please be kind.
I will try to
Nice,
join.
nice of you. Yes, Harshad Parikh, you may continue.
no, this kind of freedom to look without thinking, it may happen by itself if it happens at all. Otherwise, one has to keep on making effort at looking at whatever is happening whenever it is happening. And finally, it depends on how much importance it is in our life to look at the beginning of everything, beginning of thinking. I have tried with students in my culture class, and I asked students whether they can sit quietly and pick up the next thought which comes to their mind. And the whole class, 25 people, they all became very silent. And then after 1 minute, one girl said, "But sir, nothing is happening." So then I asked, "How do you feel about it, that nothing is happening?" So she said it was very uncomfortable. And maybe for many people it is frightening to be in that state where there are no thoughts. But that is the real freedom. So that it means that human beings are afraid of the freedom to be nothing, to have no sense of I, no thinking, just looking. So that is our difficulty, that there is a fear of not being. It's like a psychological death. Okay, I have finished.
Yeah. Sir, Sanjeev Sharma, may I request you to start your sharing screen?
Sure.
Is it possible?
Yeah, sure.
So, sir, you please share the screen. The video is for 20 minutes, isn't it?
Yes, less than 20 minutes.
Okay. So, people who wanted to be with this, they can be. If somebody has got a urgent work more than listening Krishnamurti, can leave.
Why is there conflict between you, your husband, your wife, your neighbor? You follow? Why? In that relationship, thought plays a great part, right? Thought. Both sexually and in other ways. I won't go into all the details of it because it's very simple. Thought plays a great part in our intimate relationship. Thought creates the image of the man or the woman, and the relationship is between these two images. Are you following all this? Or you're all asleep? What? So, actual relationship doesn't exist. It exists between these two images which thought has created. So, thought may be responsible for conflict. I wonder if you see all this. So is it possible not to create the image? You follow? That is seeing, contact, sensation, car, the image you have built, saying, you sitting in that car, putting your hands on the steering wheel and driving off. It's the same thing as in our personal relationship, which is the image you have built about her or him. It may take 1 minute to create that image. Or you have accumulated a series of images. And she also has created a series of images. So, thought is the origin of conflict. I wonder if you see this. Right? At least few of us, let's go together. Then the problem arises. How is one to put an end to this movement of creating images all the time? You follow? Is that at all possible? Because we live by images. The images of the past, the remembrance of incidents, the pleasant, unpleasant, all the rest of it. This is our life. And if thought is the origin of this disorder in our relationship, then what place has thought at all? You understand? I wonder if you understand what I'm talking about. See? You see this. You see very clearly, at least verbally, intellectually, that thought begins all the mess in our relationship. Then the question that arises, how am I to stop thought? Which is a totally wrong question. I wonder if you see that. Because you who want to stop thought, you are created by thought. I wonder if you see, right? So, thought has divided itself as the controller and the controlled. Then you ask the question, how am I to control thought? So we are saying that's a wrong question. That question indicates that you haven't grasped the whole movement of thought. That thought has broken itself up as the thinker and the thought, the controller and the control. So, do we realize this fact that the controller is the controlled? Huh? So what takes place? You understand my question? I see very clearly, if one sees it, I see very clearly that thought is the root of this disorder. Because thought in itself is utterly limited. It can imagine it's limitless, but in fact it's limited. It can conceive theoretically what is time, what's beyond time, God, all that. But it has no value. What has value is our daily life. So, the question when you say, how am I to stop thought, is a wrong question, because thought is the controller and the controlled. Right? Does one see this obvious fact? Or you make an abstraction of it as an idea and say, how am I to carry out that idea? Which means you haven't grasped the full significance of this fact. Right? When you make an abstraction, you are dealing with non-fact. What is fact is the conflict which thought has created, the disorder. So can you, do you actually perceive that the thinker is the root of this? You have created the image between you and your wife, husband, and so on. And that image is not actual. It's a material structure created by thought which acts as a barrier. And therefore, there was no love. Thought is not love. We'll go into this sometime. So the question is, does your mind, your brain, actually perceive the fact that thought is responsible for our confusion, disorder? When you perceive the fact, what takes place? That's what I want to get at. Let's move from there. You understand? When you see danger, physical danger, there is instant action. Unless you're neurotic or drugged or drunk or whatever it is. If you see something dangerous, there is immediate response. Now, why does your brain not see the danger that thought creates disorder? The danger of disorder. You're following, but why? There, your brain is tremendously active. When you see a danger, the adrenaline, the whole blood, everything responses. There, your life is threatened. Here also your life is threatened, which is living in disorder is a great threat, great danger to human beings. Why doesn't the brain equally see it instantly, the danger of this, as it sees the other? You follow my question? Why? Come on, sirs. Why do we not see to live in disorder is the greatest danger? Is it because we are used to disorder? Please don't accept what the speaker is saying. We are accustomed to disorder. We put up with disorder. We have the energy to create all. Which all means what? Please go into your brain, look at it, please. Laziness, indifference, lack of aesthetic appreciation of that which is beautiful. Is it the brain, having accepted disorder, disregards it, is indifferent to it, and so therefore, what happens to the brain that has created disorder, thought which has created disorder, and accepts it? What happens to the brain? Come on, sirs. It becomes natural, very dull. When you accept anything, it must be right. When you accept your relationship with another, which is essentially conflict, when you accept it, you have accepted something which is disorderly, unaesthetic, immoral. So what happens? Your life becomes mediocre, dull, and sit there and just listen to some rubbish. So, listening to all this, is there order now in your life? Not tomorrow, immediately. Because you see the danger. I wonder if you see this. You understand what I mean? You act instantly to this danger, physical danger. And here you don't act because, for various reasons. A brain that's awake, alert, sees the danger of disorder, which means what? The brain, with its thought, has created this disorder. So the brain sees the danger of it, and the brain acts because it must have security, safety. You understand all this? Now, is your brain active in that sense, which is never accepting anything, therefore questioning, asking, looking?
Thank you, Sharmaji.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
We enjoyed that. Thank you, Parikh sir. Thank you, Modak. Thank you, Toke sir.